How does the US use electronic warfare in the air and at sea? Well, this small jet is the tip of the spear before the US sends its high-value aircraft into battle. But what strategies does it actually use to blind enemy radar? First, it can use spot jamming to completely overwhelm the enemy's sensors. Second option is it can also create a digital duplicate of itself, tricking enemy missiles into locking onto a phantom target. And the military has another third trick up its sleeve, beaming fleets of fake jets directly onto the enemy's radar screens. But they don't just fire up these electronic weapons blindly. Here's the secret. They've been mapping the enemy's radar systems for months, gathering critical intelligence before transferring all that data directly into these targeting pods being flown by these jets. This is the EA-18G Growler's Advanced Electronic Warfare System, where the electronic warfare officer controls all the active jamming pods. The rear seat occupant, known as the ECMO, Electronic Countermeasures Officer, is the critical human element. While the pilot flies the jet, the ECMO controls all jamming systems in real time. He can choose the correct jamming techniques with this ALQ-218 radar. He can use spot jamming to disable a radar like this one. Once the Growler's sensors sniff out the exact frequency of an enemy radar, it doesn't just make noise, it focuses over 10 kilowatts of raw electromagnetic power directly at it. It burns through the system's processing like a blowtorch, blinding the defense grid completely. But the Growler also can emit the Phantom Fleet. It doesn't just blind the enemy, it plays mind games. It catches an incoming radar pulse, scrambles the data, and fires it right back. Suddenly, the radar operator sees dozens of Ghost fighter jets swarming their screen. Panic sets in, surface-to-air missiles are fired, but they lock onto Phantoms, detonating the empty sky. But how does it use the bait-and-switch strategy? Even if an enemy missile actually manages to lock onto a real US jet, the Growler pulls a massive bait-and-switch. It perfectly mimics the targeted jet's exact speed and location to create a digital clone. Once the enemy radar locks onto this clone, the Growler slowly drags the fake signal away. The tracking system blindly chases the Ghost, and the real aircraft escapes unharmed. Then there is this danger zone or burn-through. Jamming, however, isn't magic. If a US jet flies too close to the enemy radar, usually within 20 to 60 miles, the sheer power of the radar will eventually burn through the jamming and spot the plane. That's why the Growler has to maintain a perfect high-stakes geometric dance, constantly hovering right on the razor's edge of the threat zone. But what is the step-by-step strategy the US military launches the plane? Before a single fighter jet leaves the runway, the invisible war has already begun. For weeks, US spy planes and satellites have been hovering just out of reach, quietly listening. They are hunting for the electronic fingerprints of Iranian radar systems, mapping exactly where they are and how they communicate. They compile all of this into a digital hit list, which gets loaded directly into the brains of the Navy's electronic attack jets, the EA-18G Growlers. Back at command, planners aren't just drawing flight paths on a map, they are navigating a deadly 3D maze. They calculate massive threat rings around every enemy missile system. Then they plot exact coordinates, safe zones in the sky, where the Growlers can orbit and blast their jamming signals without getting shot down. When the strike package finally launches, it is a highly choreographed machine. You have the Growlers for electronic attack, F-35s and Super Hornets carrying the bombs, and specialized jets loaded with radar-killing missiles. Every single aircraft has a precise location, altitude, and down-to-the-second timeline. There is no guesswork. 30 minutes to target. The Growlers reach their standoff positions 50 to 100 miles out. They unleash a massive wave of broadband noise, blanketing the enemy's early warning screens in a thick electronic fog. The goal right now isn't to hide, it's to blind the enemy's big picture view before the real raid even begins. 15 minutes out. The strike fighters push into the kill zone and the Growlers move in to escort them. The jamming shifts from a blunt sledgehammer to a scalpel. They inject fake targets into the Iranian screens and scramble their speed and distance readings. The radar operators are drowning in signals, completely unable to tell which blips are real aircraft and which are digital ghosts. Now the enemy faces a terrifying dilemma. If an Iranian operator realizes they are being jammed and tries to crank up their radar's power to see through the noise, they paint a giant bullseye on their own back. US jets instantly fire a supersonic harm missile that rides that radar beam all the way to the source. The enemy's choice is impossible. Turn off your radar and be blind, or leave it on and be destroyed. While the radars are blinded, the Growlers are also severing the enemy's vocal cords. They jam the communication networks linking the missile batteries to Central Command. Even if a rogue battery spots a US jet, they can't get clearance to fire, and they can't warn their allies. The mighty